Hi, I'm Rain Osborne, the chair of the FPTA nominating committee. And I'm here today interviewing Jamie Dyson, who's a candidate for president for the FPTA. Jamie, can you start out just by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure, Rand. Thank you. My name is Jamie Dyson. I am a clinical physical therapist. I still work in the clinic at Orlando Regional Medical Center in Orlando, Florida. I've been a physical therapist here for the past 25 years, and my specialty is critical care medicine, trauma, and burn care. That's kind of been my passion for the last 20 years or so. As far as my association involvement, I've been a member since 1988. I actually just got my 25-year pin last year. My engagement, I started out in the student SIG back in the 80s. Then I moved that was part of the Massachusetts chapter. I moved to Florida in 1992. My involvement there started really with the Florida Consortia of Clinical Educators in the early 90s. I've been involved with that group, oh gosh, since the inception of that group. We actually hosted the National Clinical Education meeting here in Orlando back in the 90s, and I was a part of that. From there, I've been involved with the education section and the acute care section. My involvement with the FPTA didn't really start until I became a member of the nominating. I was elected as a member of the nominating committee, which I did. Hats off to you. That's a difficult position. And then from there, I was elected into a director-at-large position. And when I took on that position, it was changed to a new position of director of membership. So I was basically the first person to hold this office. We had to develop all the policies and procedures for this position. In that position, I chaired the membership committee, which has done a super great job. I'm so proud of those guys. In that position, we increased our membership by over 1,000 members since we started, which is just awesome. Other thing I say I get to do these things because I'm so honored to do them. I get to work with the Early Professional Special Interest Group. That was my baby. We started that from nothing after House of Delegates in 2013. They said we need to do some more things for our early professionals. So Florida is still the only chapter in the country that has a group just for the early professionals. And I'm so proud of those guys. They've done some great things. I also get to work with the Student Special Interest Group. Love working with those guys, and it's a nice transition from student member to early professional member with those two special interest groups. So working with those guys, it has just been totally awesome. And the only regret I have is that I turn out of that position because somebody else will get to take over for me. As far as other service goes, I'm a member of the Academy of Acute Care Practice Committee, and I was actually a part of the group that rewrote the lab value resource, which is available to everybody on the Academy of Acute Care website. Great resource. Go ahead and download that. I'm also on the board of directors of the ACAPT group called the National Consortia of Clinical Educators. I've been a clinical director at large on that board for the last 2 years. And my term is up, so this is a great time for me to do some more service at the chapter level as your chapter president. On the APTA side, I also served on the Excellence in Clinical Education Task Force. That was a year-long task force. And from that came the new Excellence in PT Clinical Education Task Force, which has done some great work, and that report was just released. I've also been a delegate for the past 3 years, and I was an alternate for 2 years prior to that. So that's basically the nutshell of my experience. I'm also a assistant clinical professor, a courtesy assistant clinical professor at the University of Central Florida. So I do have my foot in some academic activities, and I serve on the advisory board for Seminole State College Physical Therapist Assistant Program. That's basically me in a nutshell.
Great. Well, thank you very much. So next, I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about your vision for the FPTA, and as elected president, what would you do to achieve that vision?
Love the music. I want to have something that's short but sweet, so people can kind of remember it. And in working with the early professional, they're telling me I should have some type of hashtag. So my hashtag for my vision would be right PT at the right PT at the right time. I'm going to describe that, but that's my hashtag, the right PT at the right time. So what is the right PT? And what the right PT has many, many bullet points underneath it. The first of all being education. We've all heard the term, unwarranted treatment variance. And, in my mind, a little bit of variance is good, but there needs to be a minimum standard, a minimum threshold for physical therapists and physical therapist assistants to show a level of competency. And what our practice committee has been working on has been some great things, and I really want to support continuing that. Because in order to move forward with a lot of the initiatives, I'm going to be talking about some here in a second, we need to show that we have that minimum level of competency throughout our profession. And the only way to really show that is through continued competency in the various areas of practice. And again, some variance is okay. Membership is a huge deal. With that level of variance, we have, there are more non-members in the profession than there are members right now. We're making great strides with that. But as a profession as a whole, we need to maintain that level of competence. And the only way we're going to do that is by getting everybody involved. So membership is a huge deal. Obviously, me coming down as the membership director, I've spoken with lots of non-members and lots of members over the past 4 years, trying to understand, why folks are not members and what keeps folks being members. And for an example, as a delegate this year, we're actually bringing forward a RC based on what a member had told us about membership. And basically the RC is changing the APTA bylaws to allow active military members to select a chapter of their choice. And that's what the organization's all about. We're a membership-driven organization, and that's a perfect example of how that works. A member gave us something that was an issue. We took it all the way to the top, and now hopefully there'll be a change when we go to House. Some of you viewing this now, we've probably already had House, so you may know whether or not we passed or not, but I'm hoping that we pass. So membership, again, is all about that right PT. Continuing education is super important. I think FPTA plays a huge role in offering continuing education opportunities to both members and non-members. We need to make sure that we're providing continuing education across the continuum of care and across the lifespan to engage all of our therapists. It can't just be all outpatient. It can't just be all acute care. It can't all just be neuro. We need to make sure that everyone is engaged in taking advantage of their membership and taking advantage of the continuing education that we offer. I personally have offered lots of courses across the state. I've got to meet so many people traveling to the various districts. Kathy Swanick and I did a cardiopulmonary course that we did almost in every district, and I've got to meet so many members doing that. I love going out and meeting people and teaching people, sharing what I know and learning from them. So I think there's lots of opportunity for that beyond just our 2 annual conferences. Some smaller district events, I think, are a great way to share with everyone and to get all the different areas of practice out there. Finally, the big one is advocacy. That was probably my weakest area coming onto the board, but I've spent some long, hard hours learning and working on my advocacy skills. I've attended 3 out of the 4 possible advocacy days as a board member. The one I missed, it was due to medical reasons. I really wanted to be there. I actually Skyped in, but I couldn't physically be there, but I wanted to be there mentally, as well as attending 2 federal advocacy days up in DC. The big thing with advocacy is we need to get ourselves to a point where instead of going through politicians to add a area of practice to physical therapy, the decision really should be made by the board of PT practice. Okay, when medicine comes up with a new treatment strategy, they don't have to get an act of the legislation to implement that. They go through their own practice committee. And I know there's a lot of support behind dry needling. I know there's a lot of support behind other areas of practice. But if we advocate for having our board of practice kind of directing those areas. You know, in 10 years, we're going to have another strategy for intervention. And do we want to go to the legislation every single time we want to update our Practice Act? So I think the next step, A, is to get our direct access. And we're going to talk about that when I get to the right time here in a second. But also, we need to be able to advance practice, and doing that through advocacy and making it so our governor-appointed board of PT practice is able to make some of those decisions without us having to educate legislators, politicians on exactly what dry needling is. That's not their area of expertise. It's the expertise of the practice board. So we need to work on legislation to get that control over to them. So that's, you know, kind of my vision for the right PT, a competent, well-educated, engaged practitioner who advocates for their profession. Now we need to get on the other side of that vision and the right time. The big thing on the right time is access to us. Access to us as professionals. Patients just don't know that they can come to us directly. Patients don't know what it is that we can do. So PR is going to play a huge role in educating the consumer on what it is physical therapists do and how to access us. You know, you read the reports all the time, how many patients use the ED as their primary care physician and as their area of entry into the healthcare profession. We need to get some education out there. There's some great ways to do it through social media, through ad campaigns, and you know, we have a whole pillar dedicated to the PR. And I think we need to not only get the PR out to our professionals, which is super important as well, we need to start getting the patients. And we can do that through health fairs and getting ourselves out there to educate the consumer. Okay. Along with that, you know, obviously unrestricted direct access is a huge thing. We already talked about that on the advocacy side. But being able to carry through our interventions on patients where they're working, and, you know, do we need to be cut off by that arbitrary 30 days? Maybe it takes 32 days. You know, if the patient's making progress and there's no issues, we should be able to finish up their care without referring them to a physician. If they're not making any progress, well, maybe it is something outside our realm, and we should be referring them out. But not at that arbitrary 30 days, whenever we feel, all right, this isn't working, maybe I need to get some help. But we have the education where we all know, I'm just preaching to the choir here, we all know that we have the ability to make those decisions. So, but we need to teach our legislators that we can do that as well. And we do that through the collection of evidence. You know, we've been given this 30-day window. Let's show that it is working. We're collecting data on patients who are using direct access, and nobody's died, nobody's blown up. Let's share that evidence. Let's create some posters and papers to show that it works. So when we go there for our next advocacy days, we can have some evidence to show the legislators that this is working, and we can move forward with unrestricted direct access. Okay. The other thing there is PTs in the ED, I think, is a super important. Again, patients are using the emergency rooms as a primary care physician, and we can get more PTs in those EDs, especially those freestanding emergency rooms that are now popping up, especially in the rural areas. I think we can make a huge difference as a profession, and really make a difference in the patients that we serve. And that's our common denominator as professionals, the patients we care for, whether it's me working in critical care or somebody working in private practice. We all have those patients that are our common denominator. We need to improve the access. Not only access as an entry level, but access throughout the continuum as they go from acute care to outpatient or to inpatient rehab or skilled nursing. On that note, reimbursement is a huge issue. The workers' comp is now using third-party payers to negotiate reimbursement, and they're basically taking a good chunk of that reimbursement money. I'm a workers' comp patient. I fell victim to this myself, having to have a non-physical therapist decide whether or not I needed more physical therapy. I'm a physical therapist. I knew I needed more physical therapy, but by going through this arbitration it takes time, and there were at some points 3-week delays in my therapy being reapproved to continue. Those 3 weeks counted as the next approval rate. So if I got reapproved for 6 weeks, I already used 3 weeks waiting for them to decide I needed 6 more weeks. That's a huge problem. We need to work with this. We need to negotiate with workers' comp as well as our insurance providers to make sure that there's smooth transition from the first approval to the second approval to the third approval based on the needs of the patient. And that's what it's all about. It's all about the patients. I know it's a business, but when it comes right down to it, it's patients that are being affected. We need to fight for it, not only for us as a profession, but for the patients that we serve. The other one is the private insurance. We need to educate them just as much on what it is we do and how we can save them money. They're reimbursing us at such a low rate a lot of times, and our private practices just can't afford sometimes to keep the doors open because of the low reimbursement. Or if they do, they need to increase the number of patients per day and the number of patients per hour, which decreases the one-on-one care that the patients really need and what they really deserve. So we need to advocate through the private insurances as well so that our private practices are reimbursed at a reasonable amount so that they can keep those doors open and they can provide the care that our patients need. Finally, we have a lot of resources, and a lot of us speak to insurance carriers. A lot of us speak to politicians. We need to have some unified resources for us to use for communication. I know that there's an FA coming from the Southeast District this year looking at this, and I think it's a great idea. So the development of some unifying talking points and maybe PowerPoint presentations that all of our members can use if they do talk to a group of patients, say, or a group in the community to talk about what physical therapy is, or to talk to a legislator about what physical therapy is. So we all have that uniform message, and that's what it's really all about. Our uniform message is we all work on human movement. All right. But in the acute care setting, in the ICU, I'm working on the movement system. In the outpatient setting, we're working on the movement system. In pediatrics, we're all working on human movement. So that should be our common denominator, our common message to whoever it is we are talking to. We help people move better, whether it be through walking or crawling or participating in sport, returning to their ADLs or work hardening. It's all about movement. So we use that common language. I think it'll make us stronger as a profession and help us move forward as autonomous practitioners, which is really the ultimate goal. I think that's it.
Great. Well, thank you. And so I have one final question for you, Jamie. What's your spirit animal and why?
My spirit animal, I've been a martial artist for over 40 years, and my spirit animal is the monkey. And I'll tell you why. The monkey is very flexible and can move around obstacles and get around barriers. And that's really what life's all about. You got to find a way to get around the barriers and get to what it is you need. And it may not be the same path every time you take it. The monkey is strong. Sometimes you need to stand your ground and be strong. So, when it comes to negotiations, when it comes to talking to folks, yeah, sometimes we need to stand our ground. Sometimes we need to let the force go by us and attack it from a different angle. So from early on in my martial arts career, and I've carried it on into my real life, I have been the monkey.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview, and best of luck in the elections.
Thank you very much.